There is a sentence Viktor Frankl said and wrote, in some form, throughout his career: happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. The distinction matters more than it appears. Pursuit is direct intention, aiming at something, working toward it, treating it as the target. Ensuing is something different, happiness arising as a byproduct of attending to something else. Frankl believed, on both philosophical and clinical grounds, that happiness could only be the second. The person who pursued happiness directly would, with high reliability, miss it. The person who pursued meaning would, often, find happiness as an unsought side effect. Why is direct pursuit self-defeating? Frankl explained it through what he called the hyper-intention problem. Certain human experiences are structured such that intense attention to them interferes with their occurrence. Sleep is the clearest example. The insomniac who lies in bed actively trying to fall asleep finds sleep retreating. The harder she tries, the more impossible it becomes. The only way to fall asleep is, in some sense, to stop trying. Same with sexual response. Same with creative inspiration. Same with experiencing joy. Happiness, in Frankl's framework, is structured this way. It is a state of human flourishing that arises when the person is fully engaged with something worth being engaged with. The musician absorbed in a difficult piece. The parent fully present with a child. The thinker working through a real problem. The lover attending to the beloved. In each case, happiness arises, not from inside the absorption, where the person is too occupied to notice it, but discoverable in retrospect, as the texture of the absorbed activity. The person who, instead, asks themselves while engaged in an activity, "Am I happy yet?" has stepped outside the activity. The stepping outside is what defeats the happiness. The state required absorption. The asking has prevented absorption. The person looking for the happiness has displaced the conditions in which happiness occurs. Frankl saw the contemporary happiness pursuit industry as a vast accidental experiment confirming his thesis. The cultures that most explicitly emphasize the pursuit of happiness, Frankl had the United States particularly in mind, produce surprisingly low rates of reported well-being given their material conditions. People in these cultures have access to nearly every form of pleasure ever invented, have been encouraged from childhood to prioritize their own happiness, and report higher rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation than many less affluent societies in which the pursuit of happiness is not even a cultural goal. Why? Frankl's answer: pursuing happiness directly produces unhappiness. The constant self-monitoring required to assess whether one is happy enough defeats the absorption in which happiness occurs. The constant comparison to imagined alternatives defeats the contentment with what is present. The constant adjustment of one's life in pursuit of more happiness defeats the steady commitment to one task, one person, one truth that would produce it. The alternative Frankl proposed was simple in principle and demanding in practice. Stop pursuing happiness directly. Find a meaning, a task that calls you, a person who needs you, a truth worth serving. Pour yourself into the meaning. Let happiness arise as a side effect, or not arise at all if circumstances make it impossible. Either way, your life will be meaningful, and if happiness comes, it will come as the byproduct of a life that has been about something larger than the search for happiness. This sounds austere. It is also, in Frankl's clinical observation, what actually works. The patients who reported themselves happiest were not the ones who had pursued happiness. They were the ones who had given themselves over to something they thought worth giving themselves to. The work was the source of the happiness. The work was also independent of the happiness. If the happiness disappeared because of illness or loss or aging, the work and the meaning remained, and the person was not destroyed. Frankl's deepest objection to the happiness industry was not that happiness was a bad thing. It was that pursuing it directly produced people whose entire lives became referendums on their own emotional state. Whether they felt happy enough today, this week, this year. This is, Frankl thought, an exhausting and meaningless way to live. The alternative is a life in which the question is not how do I feel, but what does my situation ask of me, and have I done it? Live that way for years, Frankl suggested, and most people will report, looking back, that they were largely happy. Live the other way, pursuing the happiness directly, and most people will report, looking back, that they spent the years searching for something they never quite caught.